Welcome back, everybody. We've got some really interesting financial reports this time around that you guys sent in. They're for a company called CarTrade Tech Limited, and I think this is going to be a fascinating deep dive. We're going to take a close look at their business model, see what's happening in their industry, and try to get a sense of their future prospects.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's a really interesting company, especially when you consider how quickly India's market is growing and changing. I mean, they're not just selling cars. They're involved in new and used vehicle sales, online classifieds, and they even run auctions.
Yeah, it's amazing. They're like a one-stop shop for anything and everything car-related in India. So let's unpack this a little bit. We can see from these reports that they've got three main business segments: the consumer group remarketing and online classified segments. What really stands out to me is that each segment is bringing in roughly a third of their total revenue, which is a lot of money. We're talking each segment is pulling in.
Yeah, it's a smart approach. Having that kind of diversification means they're not putting all their eggs in one basket, which makes a lot of sense in a market like India where things can change pretty quickly.
Absolutely. And here's something else that I think is really interesting. Each of these segments seems to be at a different stage in its life cycle. What does that mean for their future growth? I mean, does it make it harder to plan or easier because they have all these different things going on?
That's a great question. It really shows their flexibility and how they can adapt to new trends as they pop up. For example, their consumer group is totally focused on new vehicle sales, and it's booming right now. 85% of their revenue from that segment is coming from new cars and motorcycles.
85%. Wow. That's a huge number. But, I mean, the Indian car market is already massive. How much more room for growth can there possibly be?
That's the thing. Even though India is the biggest market globally for two-wheelers and one of the top 5 for cars, car ownership is still surprisingly low when you compare it to developed countries. So there's actually a ton of potential for a company like CarTrade.
Okay. So even though it's already a big market, there's still a lot of room to grow. And it seems like the current market actually works in CarTrade's favor.
Right. You're thinking about how there's more supply than demand at the moment.
Exactly. I mean, a couple of years ago, we saw all that chaos with supply chain issues, part shortages, production delays. Demand was through the roof, and companies like CarTrade actually struggled because manufacturers and dealers didn't need to advertise as much.
Yeah, you're right. Having a tight market with limited supply actually makes it harder for CarTrade to do well.
Makes sense when you think about it that way. Now things have settled down, production's back on track, and the whole situation is flipped. Manufacturers and dealers are working harder to attract buyers, and that's where CarTrade comes in. They're connecting those dots.
They really are. They're like the matchmakers of the Indian car market. But that's not all they're doing.
Oh, right. I was just getting to that. It looks like they're actually developing technology that will let people buy cars completely online. I mean, is that even possible yet? That's a huge undertaking.
It is a big move, but it shows how well they understand the market and where it's heading. We've seen e-commerce completely change the way we buy pretty much everything, and CarTrade is betting that car buying is next.
It makes a lot of sense, especially when you consider how comfortable younger generations are doing everything online. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about their remarketing business. This is where they run physical auctions for repossessed vehicles through their subsidiary Shriram Auto Mall. It feels almost old school compared to their online stuff.
It's definitely a different side of their business. It's interesting to see them navigating both the digital and physical worlds like that.
One thing that really surprised me was that they're only selling about 25% of the vehicles listed on their platform. What happens to the rest of them?
It's important to remember that not all of those cars are just sitting around waiting to be sold. A lot of them are still with the original owners or lenders. They only go to the auction if someone actually bids on them. It's actually a pretty clever way for CarTrade to manage inventory and keep their costs down.
Oh, so it's more of a consignment model.
Yeah.
But wouldn't they want to sell more than 25% of those vehicles? I mean, are there strategies they could use to boost that conversion rate?
It's a balancing act. They need enough buyers to make sure the bidding is competitive, but they don't want to flood the market with too many vehicles and drive prices down. I mean, they could try some targeted marketing to attract specific types of buyers or maybe offer incentives to speed up sales, but they have to be really careful not to upset that delicate balance.
So there's more strategy involved in running an auction than I realized. It's not just about getting as many vehicles as possible out there. Okay, let's move on to their online classified segment. This is the one that operates under the OLX brand, and it seems like it has just enormous potential. This is India's top platform for buying and selling used goods. And we're not just talking about cars here. We're talking electronics, real estate, everything.
It's amazing. The potential there is massive. They've got a whopping 77 million monthly users on OLX, and they're tapping into a market that's just beginning to understand how convenient and affordable online classifieds can be.
And here's the real kicker. 95% of those users are organic. People are actively searching for OLX. They're not just stumbling across it. That really speaks to their brand recognition.
Absolutely. And it's something that's reflected in their strong performance on Google Trends. When people in India want to buy or sell used goods online, OLX is top of mind.
It's incredible how they've built up that level of brand recognition. But how are they actually turning all that traffic into revenue? What are their strategies for making OLX profitable?
Well, they're using a combination of advertising and transaction fees. They leverage their huge user base to attract advertisers. And they also take a small percentage of the transactions made through the platform.
So it's a multi-pronged approach. Very smart. But it seems like they're still figuring out how to really maximize OLX's potential.
You're right. Remember, they only acquired OLX a little over a year ago, so they're still in the process of integrating it into their overall ecosystem and refining their approach.
So there's a lot of room for growth there,
Yeah.
which is definitely something to watch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As CarTrade continues to explore how to get the most out of OLX, we could see some really impressive results.
Okay, let's shift gears one more time and take a look at their financial performance. I mean, they're pulling in record revenues and profits with some seriously impressive operating leverage. It's like every extra rupee they earn translates into significant profit growth. What's their secret?
Well, their financials are certainly impressive, and a lot of that comes down to two key factors: organic traffic and efficient cost management. We already talked about how much traffic they get organically, which means they're not spending a fortune on advertising to bring people to their platforms.
So they're not relying on expensive ad campaigns to drive their growth. They've already got a loyal customer base that keeps coming back for more.
Exactly. And on top of that, they're very disciplined about managing their expenses. They're not just throwing money around. They're making strategic investments in areas that will boost both growth and efficiency.
They're doing more with less. I love it. But is this kind of growth really sustainable in the long term? What are the risks and challenges that could potentially slow them down?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? Every business faces challenges, and CarTrade's no different. We've touched on competition, but it's worth taking a closer look. The Indian automotive market is attracting a lot of attention, not just from domestic players, but from international companies as well. New online platforms are popping up all the time, and even the traditional brick-and-mortar dealerships are upping their game online.
Yeah, so it's getting crowded. CarTrade can't just sit back and relax.
Exactly. They need to keep innovating and find ways to stay ahead of the curve. The automotive industry is constantly changing, and if they fall behind, they risk losing market share to those who are more adaptable.
And then there's always the regulatory landscape to think about. The Indian government has a history of stepping in and making changes, and the car industry is no exception.
That's right. Regulations can change pretty quickly. We've seen it with things like emission standards, safety regulations, even import and export restrictions. Nothing's really off the table.
So they have to be prepared to adapt to a whole other set of variables.
Absolutely. They need to stay informed about any policy shifts and be ready to adjust their strategy. Flexibility is crucial in this industry.
And of course, we can't forget about the elephant in the room, the Indian economy. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride in recent years, and any kind of major downturn could have a real impact on consumer spending, especially on big-ticket items like cars.
You're absolutely right. CarTrade's success is closely tied to the overall health of the Indian economy. If people aren't feeling confident about their finances, they're less likely to shell out for a new car.
So their feat is pretty intertwined with broader economic trends in India.
It really is. And it underscores the fact that no business operates in a vacuum. Those external factors can have a huge influence, and CarTrade needs to be prepared to navigate them.
But you know what I find really interesting is CarTrade seems to be tackling all these challenges head on. They're not just reacting to the market. They're actually trying to shape the future of the Indian automotive industry. I mean, their vision for a fully online car buying experience is ambitious. It's exciting.
It really is. They're not content with simply being a marketplace. They want to revolutionize the entire way people buy cars. And they're investing heavily in technology to make it happen.
It's a bold bet for sure. And it'll be interesting to see if it pays off. I mean, Indian consumers are getting more and more comfortable with online transactions. The potential is definitely there. But is India really ready for this kind of digital transformation? Will people actually embrace buying cars entirely online?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It would be a pretty significant cultural shift. I mean, there's a certain level of trust and comfort associated with the traditional car buying process, visiting dealerships, test driving cars, negotiating with salespeople. Are people really ready to give all that up for the convenience of buying online?
It seems like CarTrade's betting on it, especially with the younger generation of car buyers who've grown up in the digital age.
You're right. This generation is totally comfortable with technology. They expect seamless online experiences. They're much less attached to traditional ways of doing things.
So CarTrade's really positioning itself to capture that emerging market.
Yeah.
But building trust in the whole online car buying process is going to be key. How are they approaching that?
They're using a multifaceted approach. They offer things like detailed vehicle inspections, verified seller ratings, secure payment gateways. All of that is designed to address consumer concerns about transparency and security.
It sounds like they're really pulling out all the stops.
Yeah.
But let's not forget about their other business segments. Their remarketing business with the physical auctions is a consistent performer. And their online classified segment under the OLX brand has huge growth potential.
That's true. They've built a really diverse business ecosystem that covers pretty much every aspect of buying and selling cars. It's a smart strategy that minimizes their risk and maximizes their opportunities.
So they've got the vision, the strategy, and the execution. But they're also facing tough competition, a complex regulatory environment, and all the uncertainty of the Indian economy.
You've hit the nail on the head. Those are real challenges for sure. But CarTrade has a history of adapting and overcoming obstacles. They've got a solid track record.
It sounds like they've got a lot going for them despite all the challenges.
Yeah.
This is definitely a company worth watching.
Absolutely. They're pioneers in the Indian automotive market. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with next.
This has been such an informative deep dive into CarTrade Tech Limited. We've uncovered some really interesting insights about their business model, their growth strategy, and the hurdles they face.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you. CarTrade's a company that's really pushing the boundaries. Their story's just getting started.
It's quite a story. So, to sum it all up, CarTrade has a diversified business model, impressive financial performance, and a bold vision for what's next. They're operating in a tough market, but they're doing it with a focus on innovation and building trust with their customers.
They're a company to watch, for sure.
Absolutely. But here's a final thought for you. To ponder, CarTrade's betting big on bringing the entire car buying experience online, from financing to purchase. Do you think Indian consumers are really ready for that kind of digital transformation?
That's a tough one. It really depends on a lot of things like consumer behavior, how quickly technology advances, and even the overall economic climate. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
Definitely. Only time will tell how quickly Indian consumers will embrace buying cars completely online. I mean, it's a big change. It's not something that happens overnight.
It's pretty remarkable to see a company like CarTrade pushing the envelope like this. They're really trying to shape the future of their industry.
You know, that's what really stood out to me during this whole deep dive. They're not just reacting to what's happening around them. They're taking charge. They're actively trying to shape the future of car buying in India.
And they're doing it with a real focus on profitability. They've got a long-term vision. They're not just chasing quick wins. They're building a sustainable business.
And they're managing to do all of this in what is a very challenging market. The competition is intense. The regulations are complex. And let's not forget the unpredictability of the Indian economy.
You're not wrong. Those are some serious hurdles. But they've shown that they can adapt and overcome obstacles. They've got a proven track record of success.
So to wrap things up today, we've taken a deep dive into CarTrade's business model, their impressive performance, and the factors that will shape their future. They're a company that's not afraid to push the boundaries and embrace innovation, and they're clearly in it for the long haul.
They're definitely a company worth keeping an eye on. It's been great exploring this with you.
The pleasure was all mine. Until next time, happy deep diving.